YouTube, Joseph Crickmore here, and welcome back to another movie. That's right. It's finally time to do another one of the movies that you people keep seeing all the polls for on the channel. And, something good to get my mind off of the fact that, some live streams on the channel got taken down. Thanks, YouTube. Don't worry. I've already done damage control, and I'm going to make an update video for the channel because clearly the platform is getting a little too volatile about things. So we're going to do some rearranging of stuff. Never mind the fact that that changes plans considerably. So the fact that I'm even still doing this movie today is a great thing. Need something good to take my mind off that. What movie are we watching? Why, Yogi Bear, of course. The live-action one, which was technically my first exposure to the character. And I think it's still a great film, even to this day. It looks better than people would give it credit for. And yes, there are parts of it that seem very cheesy or very corny or cringe or whatever. Especially by today's standards. It's still a fun time. Tom Cavanagh was brilliantly cast. So was T.J. Miller, the lady in the movie, I'm blanking on her name, and then the voice casting of Dan Aykroyd and Justin Timberlake, outstanding. Now granted, by the time you see this video, it'll already be over, because I do movies now with streams, so you'll have already seen a post up on the channel about the live stream, if you go to that. But if you are watching this after the fact, just click the link in the description. It'll take you to the VOD on Patreon, and you can just re-experience it again. So the next time you see me will be the post-movie discussion about talking about other things about the movie. And I'll be right back with you. And cut. Alrighty, post-movie discussion time. And wow, might I say, that film is every bit as fun as when I first saw it all those years ago. There's not much I need to discuss because I said a lot during the movie, but for any people that don't know, so the movie's plot is basically Jellystone is losing money, and the mayor that's running for governor decides, okay, well, this is a liability to all of us for a city that's going broke, so bankrupt. I'm gonna change the Jellystone Park, rezone it, sell the agricultural rights, and everybody will get a ton of money, right? And there's technically nothing legally stopping the mayor from doing that, because, as we find out, Jellystone loses money every year. It hasn't made its operating budget in 10 years, which is concerning, to say the least, that they managed to survive as a state park, a national park, for a decade without making its operating budget. Which brings us to Jellystone itself. The movie is titled Yogi Bear, so we make our intro with the bear in question, Yogi. Played by Dan Aykroyd. Man, was that good casting. I know there'll be people that'll nitpick and be like, it's not Yogi, or it doesn't quite fit the character. Trust me. For having this movie be my first exposure to these characters, I think Dan Aykroyd did a great job. Absolutely great job. It's outstanding how the performance just feels like the cartoon character in live action. And it's crazy to think about because this was around the same time that Hanna-Barbera had another franchise of theirs have a live action movie with a CGI character. And I'm referring to the Scooby-Doo franchise. Of course, they got, 3 movies? But all of them used the same Shaggy, who became the standard for Shaggy because he ended up taking the role as the character. So the Yogi Bear film, you could argue, was like a pilot to see if other Hanna-Barbera characters could work in live action. And obviously, since Yogi Bear didn't do as well as they thought, plans for what came after kind of just were scrapped. So as a solo film in history, it's quite an enjoyable watch through. Just, of course, take into consideration it's meant to just be something to enjoy because Yogi is a comedy thing. You just appreciate it for what it is. Right. What else? Justin Timberlake as Boo-Boo was great casting. It's amazing how much range he has to be able to do Boo-Boo, because he would then later do Branch in the Trolls movies and sing, of course, his iconic what's the name of the song? I got sunshine in my pocket, moving so phenomenally. Can't Stop the Feeling. Oh my gosh. Why'd I forget the name of the song? So, like, he did a good job as Boo-Boo. That was really good. Tom Cavanagh as Ranger Smith is, I gotta argue, is one of the greatest casting choices for this movie. It works. I brought this up in great detail during the movie itself, but I have to point out here, Smith in this film feels like a more realistic character, like an actual person, than the cartoon Smith any day of the week. Let it be known, people, that the cartoon's gimmick was Yogi Bear, his antics, his shenanigans, and Ranger Smith being a tightly wound park ranger that has had enough of Yogi's nonsense. And he gets overly violent. Well, it's not violence, it's more like just cartoony violence, and just angry with Yogi, and etc., right? That's how Yogi Bear works. Now, you take that as your template, and you make the Tom Cavanagh Ranger Smith. But since you can't make him the villain, because he's like one of the main human characters, and you can't make Yogi the villain of his own movie, because it's a movie about him. Of course, they weren't going to do that. So they made Mayor Brown as your third-party villain to be in the way of the norm of the situation. He was cast perfectly. And for being a real version of Ranger Smith, they had to make sure he wasn't so flat, right? In the literal sense, of course. But in the literary sense, he couldn't be a flat character, right? So there are moments where, like his subplot with Rachael Johnson, I think, the love story forming between the two of them, that's nice, because Smith had never found somebody who would like him for the things he likes, and Rachael is literally the perfect girl for him. And just the way he acts around Yogi, like, it doesn't feel like the Ranger Smith of the cartoon, where he is so done with Yogi most of the time that he's angry, he yells, exactly. But the Smith in this film feels like an older version of the character. I jokingly said the cartoon could exist in the live-action universe as a promotional tool for the park, and because it comes across like that. Why else would Jellystone advertise home of Yogi Bear? Then again, if you're willingly going to Jellystone to get your food stolen by Yogi Bear and you think that's a good thing, I don't know what's wrong with you. Encountering a real bear is bad enough, let alone Yogi. In any case, my point is Smith got to be more three-dimensional. He was less angry with Yogi and more just fed up with Yogi. And people want to take that as criticism for Tom Cavanagh's acting skills. I say nay. It's a part of Smith's character here. He's not as angry with Yogi as he probably should be because he's grappling with so many other things. The loss of Jellystone, him getting relocated into the city, potentially getting away from Rachael. Now that one I don't quite get. He could always just find Rachael unless Smith never had a phone. There we go. Okay, starting to make sense. And so Smith got to be three-dimensional. He fell in love in this movie. He was annoyed with Yogi. He was happy with Yogi at the end of the movie because of the whole saving Jellystone thing. He was sad about the festival being ruined, which the whole sabotage behind that was stupid. So, like, Rachael, not much I'm going to say on her that I didn't already say, but her with Smith feels right. It worked out. They actually got a kiss on screen. I can't believe I forgot about that, but they actually got to kiss on screen. She loves working at Jellystone. It's perfect. Now, Ranger Jones. I'm not going to bring up the mayor. I brought him up enough. But my goodness, Jones, perfect casting for his character. TJ Miller somehow ends up in most of these roles that seem very similar, and here is no exception. Jones has this romanticized version of a park ranger in his head. He comes up with slogans, he makes situations more intense than they have to be, and Smith has to remind him, we're the only 2 park rangers in this entire place, which doesn't make sense until you realize Jellystone is losing money. They can't afford to get more park rangers. And then, Jones, he wants to be in charge. He wants to have that feeling of leadership. And he brings this up to Smith in his moment of triumph and coming back around to our side. And I have to applaud Smith for not firing him when he got his old job back. But I guess from Smith's perspective, Jones was just being manipulated because it's the truth. Jones does know things, don't get me wrong. He did see through most of their problems towards the end. But the fact that we had to get to that point is kind of sad. Regardless of what I think about Jones's character, the whole sabotage thing was stupid. Like, that was his stupidest moment in the entire movie. You want to sabotage a centennial festival for a national park. 100-year celebration you want ruined because you would rather have your boss's job, only to forget that the park will close? You're only going to have that job a week, maybe 5 days or less. I don't get it, Jones. What were you thinking? What were you thinking? It's a good thing you, realized what was going on when you did, but it's kind of upsetting. You would ruin a nice festival by getting Yogi involved when he was actually listening to Smith. He promised he wouldn't get involved, and until Jones decided to do what he did, Yogi was actually staying put. I'll never understand Ranger Jones. He will infuriate me to no end, but it's realistic, right? Jones was impatient, but he wasn't thinking rationally because, would I rather wait 12 years for the job or only have it for a week before the park closes? I've said enough. I've said enough about Jones. I've said enough about some of these characters. The only other thing I want to bring up about this film is the music. It's such a time capsule for the 2010s. Songs you've never heard in ages, you'll hear again in this film. And you would think, wow, when was the last time I heard that song? When was the last time I heard Don't Stop Believing? And it does make you want to go back to those songs. And it just feels it's a very wholesome film. Because it tackles one of Yogi's problems from his characterization. Of he does these things because he's selfish and he doesn't quite realize the consequences. Because back then in the cartoon, that's all it was. A cartoon. His consequences didn't matter because the episode would end right there. There was no such thing as consequences. There was no such thing as Yogi being held accountable because the joke was the bear got to do what he wanted and the ranger couldn't do much about it. Here, though, it tackles Yogi fundamentally, right? It analyzes what Yogi's character is, and he has to see himself that his antics finally brought the end to Jellystone until Yogi had to then reverse it to save Jellystone. And for people that don't want to look at it that way because, it's just a dumb Hanna-Barbera movie for a character that maybe shouldn't have gotten the movie at all, you people can criticize it all you want. But I see a film that was pretty well done. Now, is it sequel worthy? No. I don't think a sequel would have worked ever. Anyway, like, they had to invent 3/4 of what this film is from scratch. You're not making a sequel out of something like that. But I think it's a solid 7 out of 10, with my nostalgia bias aside. And with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you liked it. Hit the like button, subscribe, share the video with a friend. Make sure you join the Patreon so you can be live for those movies in the future if you want to, or for just anything else that goes on regarding the channel. Like I mentioned, we're going to have an emergency channel update in the near future because of certain YouTube things that happened recently for me. And we'll discuss how this channel will move moving forward. And speaking of being notified, keep your notifications on because, as always, I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.